Hey guys, what is going on? Frag fam. I hope you guys are all doing well today. Elliot here, and welcome back to The Fragrance Well. So not too long ago, I was listening to a podcast not related to fragrances, and the podcaster brought up the point where he was talking about suits or just how men dress in general, and he was saying the classics always work. And what he meant by that is you will often see trends in dress. We all know this. There's trends that come and go in terms of fashion, but one thing that remains steady in fashion is the classic masculine look. In terms of suits, this means it's not super fitted, it's also not super loose. The trims are correct, the lengths are correct, and it fits you nicely but comfortably. That is the classic men's suit look. Just think about how presidents dress. They are always wearing the classic fit. They're not following the trends. And I got to thinking, you could say the same thing about fragrances. There are classic fragrance DNAs, specific fragrances, or even styles of fragrances that just simply will always work. So with that thought in mind, I said, let me put together a list. So I've got 8 of them to help me illustrate this point that the classics in fragrances always work. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into it. But before we do, as always, please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you do like the content, and hit that bell icon and enable notifications so you can be notified when I upload new videos. Let's get into it. All right, first one's gonna be coming from Hermes, and this is Terre D'Hermes. Hermes Terre D'Hermes, this is the original eau de toilette. I have often called this fragrance a modern classic. It's almost 20 years since its release date, so at this point, it's just simply a classic. And I would be willing to bet that 20 years down the line, it's still gonna be readily available on fragrance shelves everywhere. This one here has a very gentlemanly, clean, masculine scent profile. When I say clean, actually it's a little bit more of a rough around the edges clean feel. It plays really nicely on orange and grapefruit like citruses, has a very earthy feel to it, very strong on the vetiver, more of the grassy, earthy, woody style of vetiver, a little bit of a smokiness to it as well. Very interesting scent DNA that I don't know if there was anything before that really resembled this. Obviously vetiver fragrances in general have certainly stood the test of time, and we're gonna get to that later, but this one does give a slightly different play on it that I am not sure really existed beforehand. And Terre D'Hermes is a great modern representation of a man who understands that classic feel, if you will, but wants to tweak it just a little bit. But as far as I'm concerned, you just can't go wrong with something like Terre D'Hermes. And when I say classics always work, I mean the fragrance always works. You can use this for anything and it will get the job done. And when I say get the job done, it may not always be the best choice, but it is a suitable choice. And that's why the entire title of this video inspired these fragrances that I have, because it'll always work. So once again, from Hermes, this one here is Terre D'Hermes. All right, next one's gonna be coming from Chanel, and this is Bleu de Chanel Parfum. Bleu de Chanel Parfum. Now I have the Parfum here, but any Bleu de Chanel will work for this subject matter. And I truly do believe that the Bleu de Chanel DNA was concocted with the intent to be as usable as possible while also having a classic gentlemanly profile to it. Obviously, this is more of a modern release, so not something you would think of from yesteryear or generations past, but it has that usability. It's clean, it's fresh, it's woody, plays nicely on citruses, plays nicely on clean aromatic notes, and that's why I think this fragrance is a perfect representation of being a classic fragrance, because this is also going to be on shelves, as far as I'm concerned, at least 20 years down the line, if not longer. And if you think about a man who has that kind of classic masculine dress to him, Bleu de Chanel would go perfectly with any of those styles as far as I'm concerned. We all know this is a fragrance DNA you can use for anything and it will work. And same as Terre D'Hermes. May not always be the best choice, but it is always a suitable choice. So that's why it is included in this video. Once again, from Chanel, this is Bleu de Chanel Parfum. All right, I got a second one coming from Chanel. This one here is gonna be Allure Homme Sport Superleggera. Chanel Allure Homme Sport Superleggera. Now this particular iteration of Allure Homme Sport came out this past year. So this fragrance in general, I'm not necessarily calling a classic. This is more about the entire Allure line. I think it is fair to say that the Chanel Allure line the original Allure Homme as well as the sport flankers can be considered classics at this point, because as far as I'm concerned, all of them can absolutely work. Now this one here in particular, very heavy mandarin-like citrus profile. It's quite woody with that, what I like to call the classic cedarwood sandalwood Chanel combination. A little bit watery as well. I really do like this stuff. It gives me a more modern, more rough around the edges even, representation of the original Chanel Allure Homme Sport, which I was not the biggest fan of. I do like the flankers, particularly the Eau Extreme, but nevertheless, that's the one that started it all in terms of the sport flanker, and Allure Homme is always going to be a classic fragrance DNA. So this is more about the Allure Homme line, and I think you can absolutely use these for anything, and they are classics as far as I'm concerned, and you can absolutely say that a man with that classic masculine look can absolutely wear just about any one of these Chanel Allure Homme fragrances out of all of the ones that exist, and it will get the job done. So once again, from Chanel, this one here is Allure Homme Sport Superleggera. All right, moving on. Next one's going to be coming from Creed, and this is Green Irish Tweed. Creed Green Irish Tweed. If you know about this fragrance, you shouldn't be surprised. This one here truly is timeless, and it is timeless because it is a classic gentlemanly fragrance DNA. Lemony notes, lavender, fresh cut green grass kind of smell, a little bit woody, quite aromatic. It's clean, it's vibrant, and it is truly timeless. And frankly, any man can wear this, any age range, any occasion. So the classic gentleman smell goes along with the classic gentleman look if you're talking about Green Irish Tweed. And I'll be completely honest, I don't wear this as much as I should because I truly do enjoy this, especially for work. It's kind of like the easiest place to pull this off. But I have smelled this on a number of people out in the field or even on vacation, and when it hits my nose, I just instantly think like that stuff still just smells amazing, still works to this day, and it doesn't matter who's wearing it. And obviously, if you are younger, there are iterations of Green Irish Tweed that put a youthful spin on it, but that further proves my point that the Green Irish Tweed DNA is a classic fragrance DNA for men and will always work. So once again, from Creed, this here is Green Irish Tweed. All right, the next one's going to be coming from Burberry, and this is Burberry Touch. Burberry Touch. Those that know, know. And I tell you somebody who knows. My father knows because he still rocks this as his typical day-to-day fragrance. And this stuff simply smells fresh, spicy, fresh, clean, and it is truly a unique scent DNA that, now that I think about it, I still have not come across another fragrance that kind of smells like Burberry Touch. There may be some clone ones out there. I'm not sure why though, because you can get this for so cheap. What's the point of even going the clone route? This is another fragrance that I am guaranteed 20 years down the line, you're still going to be able to buy as much of it as you want. And it is a scent DNA that can work for anybody and work for anything. Hence its inclusion in this video. So once again, from Burberry, this one here is Touch. All right, guys, next one's going to be coming from Guerlain, and this one here is Vetiver. Guerlain Vetiver. Now, the original iteration of Guerlain Vetiver came out in the 60s, I think. Yeah, it was like 1964 or something like that. So obviously, this probably doesn't smell exactly like that because this is not a vintage bottle. But the point remains the same. The fact that you can still get it, and the fact that they just released the Parfum version, which I really want to get my nose on, just shows that the Vetiver scent DNA will be timeless. It will always be here. It will always have success. It may not always be the most popular thing, but it is something that will absolutely work. So I'm talking about Guerlain Vetiver here, but we're talking about Vetiver fragrances in general. This one in particular, more of the classic style where it has very sharp citruses, something you can definitely find as a commonality in maybe some more classic gentleman's fragrances. So that has that here. Also a little bit of spice. It's a really nice nutmeg accord or note in this fragrance. And the Vetiver in this is going to be more of that clean, grassy, slightly floral variety. And then there's also, I think there's some leather accords in this, maybe some tobacco or something like that to just add a little bit more of a masculine edge to it. Now that's more of the classic vetiver feel. Some of the more modern ones are going to be even cleaner than this is. The citruses won't be so sharp. You may have some spice, but it might even be toned down a little bit. You may not see too much of that leather included in there, but the point remains the same. Vetiver fragrances will always get the job done as far as I'm concerned. And because they've been around for so long and continue to be released even to this day, that is always going to be a classic gentleman's fragrance choice that will always work. So once again, from Guerlain, this one here is Vetiver. All right, guys, next one's going to be coming from Giorgio Armani, and this is Acqua Di Gio Profumo. Giorgio Armani Acqua Di Gio Profumo. Now, I'm actually talking about the Acqua Di Gio line, particularly the ones that are a little bit closer to the original Acqua Di Gio. Now, there's tons of Acqua Di Gio flankers. Many of them do step outside of that. I frankly don't consider those to be that classic men's DNA. Now, this is a more modern DNA, the Acqua Di Gio DNA in general, but I still think it's been out long enough and it's still available long enough to where you can call it a classic at this point, no problem. Now, I still think this is the best iteration of it. Has the slight aquatic feel with a little bit of spice and citrus. This one in particular has nice notes of patchouli and incense, which really sets this one apart from some of the other versions of Acqua Di Gio. Granted, Profumo is discontinued, but they did do a reimagining with the Parfum. To me, it's just not as good as this, but that's neither here nor there. I include this one in mainly because fragrance enthusiasts think this one is the best, but the Acqua Di Gio DNA in general, the original, or the more white floral version of that said DNA, is something that is always going to be around as far as I'm concerned. And it has a classic gentleman's feel because it just can work for anything. That one may even be a little bit more successful in certain subsets of why you would wear a fragrance compared to some of the other ones on this list. But the point is, that's a classic scent DNA at this point, and it's gonna get the job done. And as far as I'm concerned, you can absolutely pair it with that classic gentleman's look. So once again, from Giorgio Armani, this one here is Acqua Di Gio Profumo. All right, guys, last but not least, got another one from Creed, and this is gonna be Aventus. Creed Aventus. Some people may roll their eyes at this. I don't know why they would, because you were just ignoring the obvious. Creed Aventus is a classic fragrance DNA. At this point, it's a little bit accelerated just because of its massive success, but this DNA is not going anywhere. And for me personally, I think about the original, this one right here. There obviously are tons of inspirations from the Aventus DNA, and I'm not talking about the clones. The clones are obviously trying to be this. So I'm talking about the ones that take some inspiration from this and spawn their own version of it. While I do enjoy many of those, in terms of the classic DNA that I think is the one that's going to be around to stand the test of time, I think it's the original DNA in my opinion. Even though technically this isn't the original, I'm not going to get into all that, but just normal Aventus here. Why? It works for everything. That's why I think about, if you think about the classic men's look, a fragrance like Aventus will always work with that because this scent here just has that capability to it. And just in case you are unfamiliar with the Aventus DNA, bergamot, pineapple, a little bit fruity, a little bit smoky, woody to be exact. Birch wood is kind of the wood that kind of gets the most attention from the scent. And it is something that simply took the fragrance world by storm when it was first released and continues to turn heads to this day. I see it every time I'm at a Creed counter and there are people checking out the fragrances from Creed, and they probably have heard of Aventus, and that's why they always kind of go and grab this one. Or there's someone who knows about Aventus and just doesn't want to buy a bottle, so they just walk up and pick up the tester and spray themselves with it and walk off. Shame, guys, shame. Just get it if you really like it. Once again, coming from Creed, this one here is Aventus. All right, guys, that is gonna wrap it up for this video. 8 fragrances that prove the point that the classics will always work, and that can be a particular fragrance or a fragrance DNA in general. So let me know down in the comments below if you got some fragrances that you consider to be classics and they will always work and stand the test of time and can work for any man in any situation. Put them down in the comments below, because I would love to see what you guys have to say. Contribute to the conversation. Thanks again for watching all the way into the end. I really do appreciate you guys. Please remember to be well and smell well, and I'll see you in the next episode of The Fragrance Well. Have a good one.